Right. Welcome, everybody, to the latest installment of the MediaJel podcast. My name is Guillermo Bravo. I'm the Chief Evangelist here at MediaJel. Today, we'll be covering how to execute on a cannabis brand marketing campaign with a retail partner. And we're joined by Angela Pai, who is the former CMO of Papa & Barkley, CannaCraft, and many other companies in the cannabis space. Welcome, Angela. How are you?
Good. How are you? Happy to be joining this holiday edition. This is like my little, nug ornament that I had on my tree, but I brought it down to show everybody.
Is there any special gift bags that you give your friends or family since you're in the cannabis space?
I think when you work in the cannabis space, we're always curious. And I go to 3 to 4 dispensaries every single week just to see how products are moving, have chats with bud tenders. Those are always great opportunities to see what's happening merchandise-wise in the store, what people are shopping for, and what is the overall shopping experience. So the whole aspect of retail marketing and being strong retail supporters is very critical to being a successful brand in our space. So, and I think also being in the space, there's never a lack of sampling that goes on. So it almost seems like my house is very abundant with cannabis products.
Same here. And everyone's always asking, they treat me like a medical professional. Like, okay, I have this ailment for my elbow or my knees. Like, what do you recommend? It's I've become that resource for the entire family.
Right. So it's like, I don't know. For many ailments, people will come to you and say, "Oh, I just need a really good night's sleep."
Yeah, it's a simple CBN edible. That's my go-to that I'll take. 5 milligrams, and if I really need to sleep well, I'll take 10. But yeah, well, let's get into some marketing talk. You have tremendous experience in the marketing space, and you joined the cannabis space about 3 years back. Maybe just start with a little bit about your background and what brought you to the cannabis space.
Sure. I come with over 20 years of global agency experience, working on classic iconic brands like Heinz, Procter & Gamble, J&J, having launched Tide and Tylenol in different countries in Asia, and on automotive brands like Mercedes, Ford, and then transitioning into beauty and fashion. So my last non-cannabis role was the chief marketing officer at Halston.
Wow. So you have a very diverse background. What makes cannabis so special, and what made you interested in getting in the space?
Well, I grew up with traditional Chinese medicine. So the healing properties of plants over pills, is something that I grew up with from a very young age. If you had an ailment, or if you've got just feeling a little bit under the weather or any kind of allergies, there's probably some form of traditional Chinese medicine that's going to treat the root cause rather than the symptoms. So I think in terms of the way TCM approach to physical ailments are that you're really treating the root cause of what's going on within your system that's not quite balanced, versus just treating the symptoms of what you're experiencing on the outside. And I think that with cannabis and all the wonderful properties of the plant, really looking at the overall endocannabinoid system in terms of rebalancing what is our, overall circuitry is something that's very important and part of the science and education as marketers, as we work with a whole lot of really great brands out there.
Yeah, and I've done my research, and I've hired a functional medicine doctor and practice a lot of the warm tea in the morning, really setting yourself up for balance. To start the day, practicing plant-based diet and everything kind of along with everything that comes with that, like acupuncture and so on. So it's been really, really effective in my own personal health, as well as just managing stress, especially with COVID and everything, meditation and all those practices, yoga that I do on my side just to maintain balance. So well aware of everything that you are speaking of, and it's just yeah, really passionate about it myself. So well, let's get into some of the marketing topics. You know, how do you identify, like, when you're creating a campaign with a partner retailer, how do you identify a differentiator that will connect with the retailer with whom you can, you know, pitch the co-branding marketing campaign to?
Sure. I think it's important from the brand's perspective to be able to really understand what is the consumer mix and who are the customers of that store. So not every store is the same, as we all know. I mean, that's, well, yeah, of course. But the dynamics of that store, is it more of a lifestyle type store? Is it a trendsetter type store? What is the consumer and customer mix of that particular store? What are people going into that store looking for? Is it a neighborhood? Is it a high street type store? So really being able to pinpoint what is their particular customer mix, and then being able to plan together with them a program that's going to help them drive more traffic, develop more loyalty, bring some new customers in. So depending on what the goals of that particular co-branded or co-partnered campaign, really looking at their base and being able to create a relevant experience that's going to help them with their business.
Yeah, and you mentioned customer segments. Like, how would you identify that customer segment before even getting started?
Well, a store buyer is going to know their customer pretty well. A bud tender is going to know their store pretty well. So a whole lot of planning needs to happen even before you execute on any type of campaign at the retail level, because it is about foot traffic. It's about understanding, well, what is the mix of the conversions of people going into the store versus they're looking for delivery and pickup, and finding out what that proportion is. So some of the Bay Area type dispensaries that have a much higher curbside and delivery versus an in-store, maybe some of the SoCal stores are more sort of foot traffic type driven, then you can segment and really augment a co-branded campaign in such a way where you're not just catering to people who are coming into the store, but also thinking about how can consumers of that particular dispensary take advantage and participate in the digital part as well.
Yeah, and then when speaking to different audiences in these customer segments, whether it's delivery or in-store, you're going to have different call to actions. You're going to have different goals, probably different promotions to encourage people to take action and actually go through that sales funnel. Like, how receptive are retailers, you know, from your experience in launching a digital marketing campaign versus a traditional advertising campaign?
It depends on the sophistication of that particular retailer. We knew that from March of 2020, it really helped accelerate a lot of the digital marketing activities of all dispensaries so that they can pivot from, you know, into being an essential business where they can have delivery, curbside pickup. And so the velocity of digital marketing activities really started to take off around that time, just because it was necessary and people couldn't leave their houses, right? So if you didn't have a proper online platform that was able to give a seamless experience into a conversion, you had to build that, or build it pretty darn quickly. And then second, really looking at who are the customers who are ordering products that they know. How do you develop something that is created to help consumers discover new products and not just buying what tried and true? So a lot of those, it really depends. I mean, you know, as you know, since, you know, both at Countercraft and Papa & Barkley, I had worked with MediaJel, the amount of time it takes to actually activate a digital marketing campaign could take a long time, because some retailers don't understand Google AdWords, they don't understand tagging, they don't know what a destination URL is. So a lot of that, you know, we as on the brand side do have to handhold and teach a dispensary partner if they're not really fully adapted into a digital marketing type platform.
Okay. No, and it varies depending on the retailers, as you suggested. Some of the more advanced MSOs are just single retailers. They have a pretty advanced technology stack in place with everything that they need as far as tracking to ensure that they can track the revenue and attribution for each campaign. So there's a lot of red tape really just to get set up, and it's really just on the onboarding and the campaign strategy and just ensuring that the brand and the retailer is aligned. Right? So it's really,
I would say that's 80% of the work
yeah.
in getting a campaign up and running. So, use the big word there, which is attribution, and why you need tracking pixels. When you're speaking to people within a dispensary who are, not necessarily conversant in these necessary steps of, well, what does it mean if you're going to drop a pixel on my site? What does that mean? I don't want you to track this, that, and the other. And that which you don't know scares you. So going through the process of explaining why it's necessary, where it's not subversive in any way, and that you're not trying to track their traffic, we're really trying to make sure that we're measuring ROI on any kind of investment towards digital marketing.
Yeah, and that's really step one, right? Foundation is ensure that your pixel is installed. Whatever e-commerce platform you're using, whether it's Jane, Dutchie, WooCommerce, Weedmaps, Sleeply, the number of e-commerce companies is endless. Ensuring that you have that in place so that you can actually track a revenue number per campaign and even per transaction. And when doing that, a company like ours, MediaJel, we don't track any PII, personal identification information. And that's your phone number, email, and name, and any personal details. That's all captured through the e-commerce company, right? So
yeah.
You want to ensure that
also moving into regulation, since it is such a highly regulated market, looking at, well, how much of that device ID tracking are you really doing? And maybe, we really have to walk away from that at some point because it's not compliant.
Yeah. And then, given the fact that we are in medical, and, there is the HIPAA compliance that you have to consider. And that's something that, at least on our side, that we follow all the protocols to be compliant with that. And I know that the commerce companies they've had to jump through a lot of hurdles to ensure that they are compliant, because they're storing your driver's license, passports, personal information. So they have to be really secure to be compliant. And it's really important that that you have all that to ensure safety for yourself, protection for your own licenses, for your own brand, but also, more importantly, the customers, right?
Yeah, for sure. About a year ago, as you probably know, just a whole idea of being able to send consumers messages via text, right?
Yeah.
So it's not quite the same as your pharmacist at CVS sends you get a text from CVS telling you that your prescription is ready for pickup. But, you might think it's something similar, but it's definitely not when it comes to dispensaries telling you that, oh, it's Wellness Wednesday, so it's time to come in and pick up some of your, wellness tinctures or something.
And text messaging specifically is gone through a lot of transition the last, let's say, 2 years with the phone carriers, regulating a lot of the messages that go out through text messaging. And then some of the CRM companies actually evolving and creating more of a chat technology where they don't leverage text messages in the same way. So it's just being aware of all of those restrictions, and ensuring that you do have the opt-in messaging where you require a customer to agree to your terms to opt into marketing messages, or else you could be hit with I think it's a $15,000 or $25,000 fine per text message that's sent out. And there are, legal groups that they're just going after dispensaries, just trying to, get some money out of them with some of these cases. So really protect yourself, ensure that you have proof and documentation of every time a customer opted into your CRM or your marketing messages, and just follow that as a best practice for email and text messaging specifically, because there are there are fines that can be made.
For sure. And since we're already diving straight into channel marketing,
Yeah.
through digital, let's get right in and talk about content. I mean, it's something that all of us as brands and, you know, marketers look at. Well, what's the role of content in content marketing? How do you leverage that to activate the brand? Have you seen, I mean, you work with so many brands. Have you seen brands and retailers activate, you know, are there examples that you think on the content marketing side that comes to mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first step is creating that content strategy. So, you know, a lot of the content that's created is video or photography. So ensuring that you, number one, invest in a great photo shoot so that you have a lot of lifestyle and just pictures to support any of the content that's created, whether it's published through social media or through a blog or through an ad campaign. So that's kind of step one. And then as far as activating the brand through the retailer, the blog has been really effective. So creating a kind of custom blogs with product drops aligned with maybe a YouTube overview of this is the product, this is the background, this is the values of the company, this is the you know, here's kind of the test results and everything that supports the product and product information. And then, you know, bud tenders are on the front line. So any way that you can educate bud tenders, they're your, you know, they're going to sing your praises in the store. They're having the conversations one-on-one with consumers. So bud tender education is huge. I know that my friend Ryan Porter actually had a text messaging education system called Top Tender, and they would put bud tenders through a course where they'd educate them on all the brand specifics, you know, depending on what region you are, you know, here's the place that it was grown outdoors in Humboldt, and giving background on that and the company and the grower. So bud tender education is really, really big. And if you really want to move volume, you're not going to go anywhere unless you have, you know, that bud tender education. And then supporting that with a integrated marketing campaign. So say you have an example would be a 30% off, and we can talk about this later and debate the incentives. But 30% off has been really a sweet spot for us in getting people to convert at a very high rate. High rate meaning like 10% or higher. That number specifically is really encouraged people to go through the full checkout process and actually buy something. So ensuring that you have your incentive, your messaging all aligned, and then syndicating that across all platforms. So that's going to be Google Ads is one channel we use, programmatic advertising as well. So it could be a combination of display ads, audio, and video streaming. So if you have a lot of companies aren't doing this yet, but if you do have the content, you can do a small, maybe a 10 to 15-second video spot on connected TV. And then aligning that with your social media messaging as well. So the content will be different on each platform. Social media can't promote the sale and use of cannabis, so we won't talk about incentives, but we will send people to a landing page that we can, like an interstitial page where we can talk about that a little bit more. But social media is kind of a double-edged sword where you can create organic content, but you really need to be aware of the limitations as far as content and you know, ownership of your account, you know, because it can go away. And
well, we've seen a lot of accounts get taken down recently.
Yeah.
You know, some of my friends who run significant brands have noticed that they've really had to go back and get their account back and get their main handle. So a lot of brands now have a backup IG handle that they support so that they're not completely losing touch with all of their followers and their community.
Yeah, the best way to protect yourself on that is, well, number one, don't depend on social media as your only source and your only channel for getting new customers. But number two is just get all your technology in place, all your infrastructure, so that you can collect that customer information compliantly And if your Instagram account is shut down, you still have all your customers' information, name, email, phone number, depending on which e-commerce company, all their purchasing habits, which can be found within e-commerce or a point of sale system. So, really prioritize would be my recommendation is prioritize capturing and building your customer database, because it's going to be, probably about 20% of your customers are supporting 80% of your revenue. You have those regular customers, those locals, and depending on the region, if there's a lot of kind of tourist traffic, maybe it's 10-20% of your revenue. But you really need to nurture those relationships with your existing customers, because they're the reason that you're probably still open, especially during COVID. There's a lot of challenges in keeping doors open during the pandemic. So ensuring that you're providing the best customer experience, you are investing in kind of product sourcing, adding on to your product catalog, listening to your customers, giving them what they want. So that's all just really important in nurturing those customers, and just be creative with it. If there's some vendor days or some VIP product drops or anything you can do to make your customers feel special, really take those steps and nurture those customers, because we all know there's probably 10 other dispensaries within a 10-mile radius that they can go to with a similar offering. So you have to hold them really close to your heart.
For sure. I think what happens within the store is something that brands need to pay much more attention to. From a marketing standpoint, we're really looking at, okay, what's the velocity of our sell in? And we know that through our customer orders, right? We've got in terms of sell through, and then looking at how you're stacking up versus your competitors, and where you set up on your rankings, whether it's looking at BDSA or really looking at headset data. But nobody's really looking at what's happening in the store, what's going on at the store level. So on the higher end, when we're looking at certain stores that have 75-80% of their conversions are coming through foot traffic, versus certain stores that are seeing as high as 40% of their traffic being digital, delivery or, curbside pickup, then looking at the most significant part of where your conversions are happening at the store level, who is being the bud tender, who are contributing to what's being sold through that, what I call, a concierge type service or a guided purchase opportunity, to just the statistic of knowing that about 70% of consumers who are walking into a dispensary are undecided. So if there's 70% of them are open to trying something or going to have an influenced purchase, then that bud tender interaction and what's going on at the store is really going to affect what they walk out of the store. So those are things that I actually consider to be very critical. Yeah. Recently, while I have a little bit more time than usual, some of my friends over at Oasis Research and I had actually put together a number of focus group interviews talking to experienced and non-experienced dispensary customers, asking them, what are the most important things when you're going into the store? What do you look for? What are some of the stacking of the hierarchy of needs? How do you decide on that purchase? What turns you off? So all of these very typical marketing questions that most brands and companies are not asking, and really do need to hone in on in order to continue to be successful. Because like you said, that 80-20 rule, keeping that 20% of your customer base, consumer base, who are very loyal to your brand, and you want to make sure that your brand is being activated, represented in a way that it is consistent with your values at the retailer level. So educating the retailer, educating the bud tender requires a certain level of investment and dedication.
Yeah, and you said education over and over again in this last, and education is is key from the top down, right? It all starts with management and prioritizing education, with the bud tenders, with operations, and then on the brand side, you have to do the same. If you want to see your product sold, you need to support bud tenders and really showcase your story, your values, your products, and be consistent with education, right? Like it's not something that you can read a book and move on. No, like it's constant every week. Bud tenders can be
Absolutely.
educated.
Absolutely. When you're looking at, it's not one and done,
Yeah.
Don't do it once and then you walk away and anticipate that the bud tender is going to be able to regurgitate, but you want that person to actually experience your products and your brands. If you've got a new product launch or a new brand launch, of course, there's going to be some sort of an immersion that you're sharing about the new information about your products, what's been reformulated, why is it better, how does it stack up against competitive, its competitive set, and what's relevant in terms of helping the bud tender understand your brand and product and who it's targeted to. And I think one of the things that I hear a lot about from buyers and also with dispensary owners are, you don't have to give us all the swag. We're swimming in swag, but instead, please, invest in education, invest in how to teach our people to sell or promote or recommend your products. And that means, what is the origin story? What is it about your products and brand, and who is it targeted to, so that we are providing that level of input. And one of my favorite stat is that bud tender turnover at a store is 6 months. So if you've done your initial education or demo series for bud tenders, you need to be going back there at least a couple of times a year to remind them, because their turnover is also affecting the amount of knowledge that's being retained within that store over a period of time.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a revolving door with bud tenders, unfortunately, like you said, 6 months. So prioritize education, make that a core part of your operations, and you'll reap the benefits, and so your customers are going to be happy, and it's a win-win for all parties.
Mm-hmm. I've definitely heard that with consumers walking into a dispensary, they want to be treated in a way like that you remember who they are. When you walk into the dispensary, they're a familiar face. You don't have to necessarily remember what their names are. It might be nice, but let's say if it's like a Sephora experience where they know what you purchased. They know what you've been coming in for, and you're actually able to make suggestions on, if you purchase this particular brand of flower or these types of pre-rolls, and you also bought some pain balm, here are some new items that you might want to try, or I've got a new strain of this particular brand that you really like. So imagine where we can get to a place where you get the recommendation based off of actual real knowledge of what that consumer is spending and what they had bought in the past.
Yeah, and all that information is easily accessible in the point of sale system, right? So depending on which system you're using, I know Trees has this set up where, if I go into a dispensary in the Bay Area, they know me, they know my name. I wait for a second, and then they'll come get me from the check-in. They know what I've ordered. They know what I like. I like sativa flower and edibles, and they'll just point me in the right direction. It just makes my experience that more. It's the personalization, right? It's just feeling special when you go into a store.
Very much so. So if they're already walking around with their iPad, they know who you are, and they're able to pull up your purchase history. They're going to have a much more relevant conversation with you as they're guiding you through what your purchase intent is for that particular visit.
Exactly. And your marketing is innovation focused. Like, how do you leverage your experience with R&D and scientific affairs at Cannacraft to establish campaign goals that will provide insights for iterating the next campaign?
You got to love data.
Yeah.
As a marketer in any kind of space, you really have to be, a real advocate for getting, good, solid data so that you can actually make decisions on. So whether you're looking for that white space for a new product that you want to bring to market. So if you think about, whether it's like a Gem and Jane from middle of the year that that we launched at Cannabis, or the latest SKU from Care by Design, which is a 1-to-1 max. It's got 2,000 milligrams of cannabinoids in a 15 ml tincture. So you're really looking at, I know, but we'll get to that in a moment. So you're really looking at the overall category, and you're saying, okay, what is the velocity of growth for each one of the product form factors, whether it's, different sizes of the flower or pre-rolls, or it's with different volume of the vapes, and looking into beverages, tinctures, soft gels, whatever. You're really looking at the charts of what's the velocity of growth and where each one of the top 12 players are nesting within the space. How are they priced? What is their actual SKU offering? What sizes and what types of product form? And then from there, you kind of go, oh, this is moving really, really quickly. And we don't really have a horse in that race. So let's look at developing something that is going to accelerate that. So in the case of Cannabis, it already has the number 2 and 3 beverage SKU, beverage brand within beverages. So you've got Hi-Fi Hops, you've got Keef, and it used to be number 1 and 2 before Can really saw its velocity driving that microdose beverage within that segment in the category. And we felt that there was an opportunity within the rapidly growing beverage space, even though it still represents less than 2% of the overall industry, but just because it's a way for driving and earning new customers into the cannabis industry, into the segment. You need to kind of bring new users. That area of creating a brand for women by women was an opportunity that we saw as a real white space to be able to develop for. So again, as a marketer, we start with who are we designing this for, right? So we see an opportunity within the data of within the market. We decide on who are we designing for. And then you go about creating a concept of a brand targeting women. And then you can then look at, well, what should the potency be? What should the flavor profile be? Should it be an 8-ounce or a 12-ounce? How are we going to price it? How are we going to drive the COGS? And which are the right retailers to actually launch with? So you're really seeing it through the entire arc, from opportunity, supply chain, to your activation, looking at the right retailers, then with content marketing, email marketing, and we didn't do any text messaging, but also in terms of event activations, so that there are opportunities for people to actually try and experience the product in a compliant way. So the opportunity of looking through the entire arc and having R&D and scientific affairs report in through as part of that team, makes it less risky, because you're eliminating a lot of the, oh no, we can't do that, what are you thinking, conversations. So, with the case of Gem and Jane, we started concepting Gem and Jane at the end of October of last year, and we already had the first products rolling off space station by the first week of May. So that's what, 6 months, 7 months in terms of how quickly we are able to bring a product to market. And you never want to miss certain seasonal windows. So knowing that summer, from Memorial Day weekend is the kickoff of the beverage season, we absolutely had to nail that to make sure that we weren't waiting around until dry January.
Exactly. And you mentioned the Lagunitas partner product, which is probably for I don't know what the demographics on that, but I'm assuming male. And then you had the for women by women products. How would you go about activating, reaching those customers, through digital marketing?
Well, in terms of targeting a female purchaser, you might want to look at adjacent products, right? So you can look at adjacent products within the cannabis space, Or if you're looking at adjacent products outside of the cannabis space. So if you're talking about women who are cannabis consumers who have walked into a dispensary or purchased out of dispensary in the last 90 days, they may have been an edibles customer or a multi-pack pre-roll customer. Then you start checking the box of who you really, really want to target. And then you create that geofence around your retailer who you're going to be activating with, create the right type of programmatic campaign and beautiful content and go for it.
Exactly. And you're an advisory board member and professor at Loyola Marymount University School of Business. Like, what insights do you have about consumers in the college market specifically?
Well, they have to be over 21. So it's not like, we can market to people who are underage. But second to that, there's a lot of interest in the cannabis industry. Oftentimes when I'm going to, especially now around holiday parties, there are like the kids and nieces or cousins of people who, when they hear, oh my God, Ange, you're in the cannabis industry, how can I get an internship? And I'm like, well, I think cannabis is kind of like the new tech right now.
Yeah.
So it's definitely of real interest for a lot of younger folks. And we do want that young talent who are 21 and over to be able to come into this space. The Gen Zs are definitely driving a lot of growth in flower and vape. And they're equally represented across all the form factors. So we do want that new consumer coming into the marketplace. But in terms of how do you market to colleges, I don't think it's like where they are, it's who they are. Again, you need to design to who your customer is and look for ways in which you can have those relevant conversations and incentivize them to go and do something. I consider that marketing is successful when we're able to change behavior. So what behavior do I want to actually create?
It's a great point. And, when thinking about reaching these customers, I'll just give an example. We have a campaign up in Michigan that we're running. And it's, we want to reach college students. So we're targeting 21 to 30 years old as far as the customer segment. So, just a little background on programmatic, you do have the access to audience general information. So you can get the demographics, their income, age, sex, all of that information is available within a programmatic platform. So you can just filter that out. I want to target women that are 21 to 30 that walk into University of Michigan and have been to a cannabis dispensary in the last 6 months. You have access to that data to activate it, right? So it's all the tools are available. I think Facebook, when you're creating a campaign, the filters that you can add on there is pretty much endless.
Yep.
So it's really up to you on like what boxes do you want to check, what are you looking for, and it does get a little more expensive when you start to add more filters. So it's going to cost a little bit more on a CPM, which is a cost per 1,000 impressions. But it's highly targeted. You're getting the audience that you want. If you have 5 campaigns running at the same time, one targeting the beer drinkers, one targeting the flower users, one with the edibles, one lifestyle, and one medical focused. You can create different content for all of those with different landing pages to target different audiences, and you can have them all running at the same time. So it's just important to know what tools are available, and given all the technology and evolution in the last 10 years, right? At the same time as cannabis, like everything has changed, and it's all because of this. So mobile phones have really given us access to reach customers in new ways, and as advertisers, given us the ability to only speak to the people that we want to, which is really important.
For sure. I mean, if I think back to my early days of working in an ad agency, obviously we can't put a TV a commercial for cannabis on mainstream TV, but we can use connected TV now, as you had mentioned before. But in the early days when I started, you were really looking at creating at least 3 times the initial impression to get awareness for whatever you're launching. And then you're hoping for the best in terms of them going to a store and buying the product that you want, right? And now, because of the ability of responsive marketing to be able to ping somebody on their phone, or if they're scrolling through a certain site and automatically, they get this programmatic ad from us and go, oh, isn't that interesting? And as you know, we were actually looking at out of home, but in Ubers and Lyfts, in terms of having that responsive ad popping up on the screen if you're driving nearby a certain dispensary and maybe you need to pick up some AVX while you're in town type. So we really want to make sure that we are looking at all the various channels as you're activating and supporting retailers in a way that's going to be surprising and it's going to be catching consumers' attention.
Yeah, and we've actually looked into having that channel added to our programmatic network as well, so they can just run everything through our dashboard, and just track from first impression to actual conversion. And we only have about 15 minutes left, so I do want to leave some time, for some of our attendees to ask questions. And we do have one, Angela, for you from Todd Geller.
Okay.
He says that loyalty is the biggest problem with dispensaries and brands, and especially with college students. How do you combat that?
Okay, we're talking about loyalty, then we're talking about like that repeat of the second and third time. If they're looking at, the different types of deals that they're offering, I think there's a huge opportunity for dispensaries to actually create in-store loyalty platforms to be able to retain those younger consumers who are 21 plus, where if they feel that the experience of the store, the value of what they're getting, the overall product mix, that's allowing them to learn about what's new and different, creating a loyalty program that's targeted and relevant, like we were talking about with Sephora, that I think that's probably one of the best ways to go about it. I mean, obviously there are going to be platforms like, Lucid Green with QR codes that's going to allow you to learn about a particular brand or product as you go, as you're walking around with your phone. That has a loyalty part of it that can develop together with a retailer to be able to maintain that stickiness of that consumer. But the more relevant you are, the better opportunity you have in terms of retaining that consumer. And hopefully you are creating a differentiated experience. So consumers are probably coming back for a particular in-store activation. They're coming in for a flower event or for a cannabis event. I know when around the time of Memorial Day weekend, Hi-Fi Hops, we had several in-store activations. Actually, it wasn't Memorial Day weekend, it was actually 420. We had several in-store activations with Sweet Flower where we had pizza and Hi-Fi, hops and pie. And being able to do that at some of their stores. So we actually brought a pizza truck to a couple of Sweet Flowers, and then people come in, they're shopping their 420, they're getting a slice of pie, they're getting some Hi-Fi. So something that's different. And I think that goes a lot in terms of being able to create a differentiated retail experience.
And one thing that we forgot to mention is just be active in the community around you. That's something free, or something free that you can do that is going to go a long ways, because people notice, especially in a small town. If you're active at sport events or just in any way, it's a fundamental part about just joining the community. And I've seen some advanced strategies used to really focus on loyalty, and it just really depends on your store, like the way that you have it set up and your customer base. I do have some partners up in Washington State where it's really competitive and everyone's just competing on price. And the way that they differentiate themselves is they they got to a level where they sold so much volume that they requested exclusivity on product drops, and that was their way to jump ahead of the competition. Like, you can't buy this anywhere else except here. And if you do get to that level where you're moving, $1 million in revenue a month in one location, like you have that negotiation power where you can start to make those requests, depending on where you are. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. If you're working with, larger dispensaries like MedMan or March and Ash, and single stores like Airfield as well, where they have such a huge following in terms of their customer space, it makes sense both from a customer experience standpoint to create something that's bespoke.
Yeah.
As well as offer first fresh drops that exclusive to them, so that they are standing out and being differentiated within their marketed space.
Exactly. And Brian Arnold has a question. Any tips on using Google AdWords without breaking their no cannabis advertising policy? I guess I'll take that one. So Google's policy is actually it's interesting. They don't want you to promote the sale and use, but they also turn a blind eye when you're advertising cannabis. So the best way to get those ads approved, number one, is you have to be really conservative with what you say. You can't use cannabis or any mentions of cannabis in your ad. You can't use it on the landing page. Everything needs to be really clean as far as the ad copy and landing page. And then as far as bidding on keywords, you can bid on whatever keyword you want. But it is challenging. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat, like, it is challenging to keep campaigns active, and that's what we do on our side. We have 5 full-time engineers that all they focus on is ensuring that campaigns are still live, and if they are disapproved, looking at ways to remedy that. So it is a resource heavy, I would say, campaign channel, but high ROI. So you can turn on a Google Ads campaign, and next week you already start to see transactions come through. And the main reason is that it's intent based, right? People already are searching for a product to buy. They're looking for Absolute Extracts vape pen, and they want to buy it now, and they'll search for it on Google, and whoever's closest to them with that product that's showing up in search results, they'll probably buy from you, or at least you'll have a good chance at it. So, it's a combination of like art meets the science. So you have to be creative on the way that you say things in Google, but it's powerful, right? So all the metrics are there to support it, and the data's there. Just ensure you have everything set up on the attribution side. And one thing I do want to point out is, we talked about social media and how you don't own anything in social media. Google Ads, for organic search or paid search, as far as your website and how you're ranking organically, no one can take that away from you as long as you're following best practices. And most of your Google ad assets you can own. And then if you don't want to have to jump through these additional hoops in Google Ads, you can always leverage programmatic advertising, and there's no limitations there as long as you're within the compliance of your city, state, or province. So programmatic advertising, you can do like banner ads, video ads, podcast ads. You can be explicit with those, and you can promote the sale and use of a product. You can show flower, you can show consumption, depending on what publications you're using.
And you can do, video programmatic as well. They don't have to be static.
Exactly. So connected TV, someone's on Crackle, they're watching a show, boom, video of Absolute Extracts pops up showing, someone going on a hike, smoking a vape, boom, next thing you know, you're on your phone, you're seeing the same ad. And then you do a Google search for Absolute Extracts, and boom, there you are. That's the sample of all the touches, like the rule of 7, right? You need to touch a customer 7 times before they'll make a purchase. So you really, having multiple channels working together is really just going to support your end goal.
I see a question from Isabel, and I wanted to address that because it's about outdoor advertising. Many brands and retailers have been collaborating on outdoor billboards in Michigan, and is it worth it to invest in something like that? Having been a marketer that has used billboards in the past, I would say billboards in and of themselves are not effective, in that you can't just have a billboard campaign. That billboard campaign has to tie into other marketing channels. So in the case of Papa and Barkley, when we did what we called our desert activation, was very targeted to Palm Springs. We had billboards right along the freeway, and some of even within Palm Springs. I think we spent like $90,000 on billboards for a period of 3 months. But the billboards were basically driving the ubiquity and familiarity of Papa and Barkley as a brand, and they saw that. And within the billboard, there was a URL that you can go to, which was on our at that time Papa and Barkley on a Jane platform site that drove you to a particular type of experience. But at the same time, we were also working directly with assisted living type companies, where we actually educated, I think, 3,000 senior living, so active aging community. And, we had a 101 in terms of cannabis 101 education. And then a week later, we would basically bus them into certain dispensaries within the Palm Springs area. I think at the height of that particular desert activation, we had bussed 100 consumers into one dispensary in one day. I think that was like three bus trips. And obviously this is pre-pandemic, so it was something that needed to be stopped. But the velocity of growth in the desert area for Papa and Barkley, and the loyalty that was able to garner with outdoor as being one of the channels that we had used in terms of overall integrated marketing with in-store incentives as well. And even now in the desert area, especially in the wellness realm, I don't think there's any other brand they love more than Papa and Barkley, because you're able to show a really well executed integrated campaign that brings customers to a retailer with an education first initiative.
Yeah. And just to second everything that Angela said, billboards are top funnel, right? So they're brand awareness, your new product, your new brand, people don't know about you. Programmatic advertising, billboards, they're all top funnel. And Google ads and organic search, those are more bottom funnel. There's a lot in between that you need to do to support that, and that's the education, the activations that you did with the baby boomer demographic. So it's all important channels to really support the end goal, and it's not one channel is going to be the best. So you really need to be activated across all of them.
100%. And then if you think about that, getting back to that customer loyalty, knowing that active aging community, or you call them the boomers, they're going to be super sticky if they find those wellness products that really help them to be more active, to have a really great active lifestyle. So then, if you're looking at lifetime value of a particular segment and the loyalty that comes with it, when they find the products that work for them, that's really worth the investment as well. So again, throwing acronyms out there, lifetime value, LTV, so important. And I think there's one more from Kyle Gordon about wanting to stand out.
Yeah. So any tips you would give in a crowded market? How can I stand out from other reps when trying to get a new craft cannabis brand carried by a retailer?
I would say go back to your origin story. What is it about your craft cannabis brand that really helps it stand out? Is it the integrity of the grow? Is it how you are, is it hand trimmed, hand finished, hand packed? And go back to the origin story, because it gives people, and especially, dispensary buyers and bud tenders, something to talk about. So if you're talking about a craft brand, there's got to be a certain level of love and attention that goes into creating your brand. And that love and attention with the right story can really then extend out to the potential consumer. So as a rep, have something different to say that is going to really hit a chord, so that when somebody is recommending your brand, they're going to feel a lot more heart to it, because they say, this is a brand that really understands how to do it. I think we see a lot of reps walking in with lanyards and, cupcakes and whatnot. Those are all really, really nice. But ultimately, they can't bring that cupcake to that customer conversation. They're going to have to tell a story.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Now, one final question from Saeed Khan. How do we, as an industry in California, deal with the race to the bottom when it comes to pricing, especially for flower?
Oh, that's so hard. And I know Saif because he was part of the brand ambassador team and one of our strongest educators that has ever been at Popham Barkley. So I'm a huge fan of his. I think the sad part is there are a lot of brands who are really ready for that race to the bottom. But if you do have that differentiated origin story and the integrity and being able to hold the higher ground for why your product and your brand is worth its weight, I think you got to keep telling that story and try not to participate in that race to the bottom, because you're always going to have your value customer, but then you still have a lot of consumers who are going in and saying, I want to stand behind the brands that are standing behind the community.
Yeah, and it's a tough one. I mean, I've really had firsthand experience dealing with that in Washington State, just the last, 6-7 years, because everyone's selling the same product. There's no vertical integration, and there's 10 stores in one city with a small population. So it's it's tough. And I know the ones that have been successful, from my experience, have been disincentives are tough depending on which state. But always, I guess, making a customer feel like they're winning on every experience. And even if it could be just the way you're pricing things, you could have a higher price, but on every order, you're offering some type of incentive or a value add or a cheap pre-roll or something like $1 pre-roll or a cent pre-roll just to add on to that sale. So that they just feel like they're walking away with something more than they anticipated. And then another strategy is any products that's not selling through, they'll just discount that at a heavy rate and almost like a giveaway, just to, number one, get rid of that product and open up that shelf space, but just to make people feel like they're getting some incentives. And it's a weekly deal. I know I have a heart up in Washington State. We practice this religiously, and we're able to move, $800K in sales just in online orders, just from text messaging, email, and incentives. And that was it. But that was a store in Belltown where you walked in, and it's a small store, but they're doing over 1.2 million a month in revenue in a small store, but it's all e-commerce sales, right? So and just providing that additional incentives. And that was their model. It's sell more product at a lower margin, but that's how they capture their market share.
However, if you think about the flip side of that, if we're able to push retailers to sell more products at a higher margin and be able to pass it on to equitably for brands and also for consumers, so that they feel that they're getting the right target, then we have a really great growing market as well. But I know we're at 12:01 now. A lot of the taxation conversation that's been going on around the state of California, where we really need to be supporting retailers and cultivators so that the tax relief for all of us, in order for us to be a vibrant, legitimate part of the cannabis industry, is very critical. So sign your petitions and fight for taxation reform for all of us.
Agreed. And thank you, Angela, for taking the time today and sharing your insights. And I know our audience has been really engaged and enjoyed the conversation. So if you'd like to share a little bit about where they can find you, what's your social tags, email, company, domain name.
Sure. You can always find me on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. It's just Angela Pye. And also in terms of Instagram, it's just at Angela Pye, and you can always find me. And I always respond.
Thank you again, Angela. Have a wonderful week. Happy holidays and Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.